1 year after reaching my high of 2566, I fell to unprecedented lows at 2238, October 13th, 2025, after a miserable Comet tournament. But then I reached 2300 in days, 2400 in weeks, and finally 1 week ago, I reached 2500 after beating a cheater.
Huh? Hold up. Wait a minute.
It was in this position. My opponent castled long, and I want to connect my rooks, so I play the move King E2, connecting my rooks. And now the king goes to C7, and now I have to establish a plan. And usually in close positions, which is the case here, you want to create a breakthrough. And the only possible breakthrough for white, this could happen, but the real juicy one is B5 to threaten B6 with the fork here. So that's what I go for. I go for A4. My opponent plays Queen B8, and now this is the move, B5. And here these rooks are challenging each other on the file, and black would love the file. So my opponent trades rooks once and now plays rook H8. And after this trade here, queen takes, and the queen would invade on this file and black would be fine. But I have a little trick up my sleeve, and I play the move, intermediate move, B6 check to the king, forcing this king down, and if the king goes to D8, I can trade rooks now and play Queen H3, attacking this bishop. First of all, the queen hasn't taken, as you can see, and me attacking this bishop means that the king cannot move to defend this bishop via the queen. So the bishop has to move, and now Queen H7, and there's no way for you to defend this bishop. It's a completely over chess game. The bishop would go to F8, and now I take here, and then I will take here, and then I'll take here, and I'll take here, and it's completely over. So my opponent sees this and plays knight takes B6, sacrificing a knight for 2 pawns because it's completely over, and the conversion was very easy. And then I reached 2510. When in this position, my opponent should have played King H2 here and instead played King H1, the complete blunder, giving me Queen F3 check, and whatever white plays next with the king, I'll go with Pawn H3 threatening checkmate. And after my opponent went Rook G1, the only way to defend mate, giving this bishop, I took the bishop, and after King takes H3, my opponent missed a very nice detail. I can play the crushing move King G7. Opening up, clearing this line for this rook to checkmate this king in a few moves, and my opponent resigned here. And shortly thereafter, I reached 2520. So I'm playing a 2700 here, and that's the most fun part about this level, you guys, is that when I'm 2500, you get paired against an IM, a GM, a strong FM, a strong NM. It's a blast of a lifetime. And here I'm paired up against a 2700 because there's just not that many 2500s in the pool. So I'm grinding this game, right? I'm just playing the best moves possible in a completely equal position, yet my opponent and I's time goes very much down. I have 19 seconds, my opponent has 10, and here I tend a little trap. My opponent plays Queen E4, which I was anticipating, attacking my pawn, and I played the only genuine move to defend this with Bishop E5, but this is very nice because it cuts off the queen from the defense of this pawn here. And my opponent responds very immediately, having 10 seconds with Knight D5, and now I have Queen takes C6 check. And after the king moves, my opponent, you can feel it, is flustered. I trade queens and I bring my king up very fast. And I do this all in a very low amount of time. And my opponent has 1 second left. And I'm flagging him, but I'm winning. My opponent resigns and I beat a 2700. That's Levy levels. And all of a sudden, I'm 2530. So against this candidate master, he gives a pawn because he thinks it's a poison pawn, but actually this gives me a straight up passed C pawn on this C line. And then he makes a big mistake a few moves later, E4. Now, I don't know why I didn't take. I didn't see that I have more attackers than defenders. It's a very clear move now that I see it. But anyways, I was just excited to see E4 because I have 2 passed pawns now. So I play D3. I try to mint this passed pawn into a very solidly placed pawn on D3 and blocking this rook and queen. That's always nice when you block your opponent's firepower, right? So he plays E5, attacking my knight, and now I go for this nice knight D5, attacking this bishop. And now comes the critical moment. He plays pawn to E6, attacking my knight and my pawn. Now, if I move my knight, there's pawn takes check, and then the bishop picks up the rook. I'm sure you can see that. Any level can see that, right? So I see that and I say, so this is forced. I have to take this pawn. Bishop takes. And now is the critical moment. You see, if you go King H8, now white has a lot of activity with Knight G5 coming in, threatening Knight F7 check. And then when the king has to come back, there's Knight D6 check, winning the queen because of this discovered check of the bishop. So you have to have the mindset to be like, I already have a pawn advantage. I grasped a pawn here, and I have 2 passed pawns. So I'm at the point where it would be worth to take this bishop off the board immediately. It's a great move. That's crazy. Rook takes e6, sacrificing the rook, sacrificing the exchange for the 2 pawns and a little bit more. So the bishop is going to be very strong and a little bit more. After rook takes, I saw that I can take the second bishop of the bishop pair and weaken the king. Weakening the king is like worth plus infinity at most in chess. It's like the best thing ever. So you want to do it when you can. And here black is -4, even though I'm down material, right? And the way to do it is that I play the only move now again, c4, minting this pawn and threatening c3. 2 pawns on the 6th rank that are well protected are worth a full rook in chess. That's good to know. My opponent plays queen e1, and now I go, my opponent blunders. I don't know why he blundered, but c3, c2's coming. Defending this knight is tough. He blunders the knight. Whoop-de-doo. And after rook b2, it's very important to convert in chess. And here, by seeking the weak color complex of the light squares here, you can easily identify black's next move that is super strong, bishop b7, threatening mate 2 ways and forcing this rook to sacrifice itself on the bishop. And after rook e7, things get scary. Queen is coming into e6. I still have to be careful, maybe a rook e8 check. And now it's very tough to defend, but I find this very nice move, queen c6. And after rook e8, my idea is that I can't play rook takes e8 because this loses on the spot to queen takes, and now the only move to blockade is knight f8, and I lose my queen. So here I was planning knight f8, and that's what happened. Defending while not having, because this is defended, while not having to do anything here. And now I'm attacking the rook. And now my pawns are rushing down the board. And now my opponent has nothing. Rook e3, I go check, and now I sack my queen for c3. 2 pawns on the 6th rank is worth a rook. And if I have a rook here, and I have a rook supporting these 2 pawns, and I have a knight, that means 2 rooks and a knight against the queen. And so my opponent plays here, and now after c2, it's completely over. My opponent did not resign. Queen c1, d2, queen takes c1 queen, and then we trade queens and we're winning. But my opponent played queen e4, c1 queen, and then didn't resign here, resigned here. And so I won. 25-30. And the next thing you know, I'm 25-40. So in this crazy position, I'm playing a 26-42 here. And my opponent plays king takes pawn. I sack a pawn for this brilliant idea. I think is brilliant. I don't know. You be the judge. Here I played pawn takes pawn, and I have a huge issue in this position. My bishop is trapped, which means my rook is trapped. But I found an idea to release the tension, release the prison inmates. King f4. I'm threatening to take this pawn. So black has to defend this pawn, and my bishop and rook are still trapped. But I have a very nice idea now that my king is on f4. And I play this very nice bishop d3, sleight of hand. I'm sacrificing my bishop, but because my king is here, this allows my rook to come on in with a checkmating threat. And so my opponent can't take my bishop. So my opponent has to secure the king. And now my bishop is free, like Dobby in Harry Potter. Bishop e2 check. King g6, and now rook g1 check. The king has to hide, and now I play this very nice bishop h5. I'm threatening to play bishop g6 eventually. So bishop e6, and I don't find a way to win the pawn, but wrong piece, right execution. The infiltration is very nice. Rook g6. Oh, I didn't play rook g6. Rook g6 was the winning move. I played bishop g6 check, king here, and then bishop h5, rook here, and then I played rook g6, now the right move. Here it's still equal. I trade bishops, and here it's a winning pawn endgame if you know, because you put pressure on this pawn. And there's something in chess called the key squares. And after I sack the pawn here and we trade those 2 pawns, my king gets on one of this pawn's key squares. So in chess, when this weak pawn happens, if your king is on any of the 3 squares to its right or left, these are key squares, and you will beat the versing king. So when my king hops on g5 here, on one of the 3 key squares, it assures me that I'm going to win the pawn. And once I win the pawn by force, I'm going to win the pawn endgame. And my opponent, they don't resign at this level because of the time, but I checkmated a 2640. And then at 2540, I pause. I wanted to share this dear moment of crossing 2566 with you guys. So I planned a stream on November 4th in hopes of achieving this goal. And from that stream, I chose 9 games that were instrumental in achieving the inevitable. From these special games, you will receive 8 pieces of wisdom of the 2500 Blitz player. You're pretty lucky. Game 1, the art of restriction. At this level, it is instrumental to know how to restrict your opponent's pieces and plans. So we get into this Italian in which I open up the center and play bishop d2. This is a pet line from when I'm very, very young. And here my opponent makes a first inaccuracy, castles, when black should have played d5. This lets me play d5, take up the center, and attack this knight. And now my opponent makes a second mistake. Instead of going knight e7 to regroup on g6, my opponent violates one of the key and only rules about the knight. The knight on the rim is dim. And after knight a5 attacking my bishop, I simply play bishop d3, threatening b4 to trap the knight. My opponent sees this, he's a very strong player, and plays pawn b6. Clearing the b7 square for the knight to go back to. And this is where we start restricting. b4, knight to b7, and now we castle. And after the rook moves, I go queen b3. Eyeing this, I'm trying to push e5. And now after d6, trying to open up the bishop, but very, very, very bad is taking up the square for this knight, the only square. Here I play h3, restricting this bishop once more. And now we have two minor pieces that are complete, 3 pieces that are completely restricted from good moves. Bishop e6 is not possible. Bishop f5, bishop g4, knight here, knight advancing anywhere. This knight advancing anywhere. And from all these clogged pieces comes an after effect. Consequences of your actions. This rook on a8 is completely clogged from development. And so how do you benefit from this? So my opponent plays h6, and now I just develop, I play normal, and I play a3 here. I don't want to play b5 and give the c5 square to the knight, so I stand my ground, and after a takes, I take happily because now I can open files on this rook that can't defend. That can't be defended, and after rook takes, I have free infiltration rights on a7 and a8. So my opponent plays bishop d7, and now I play rook a7, attacking this knight, and after bishop back to c8, boom. The knight, the bishop are restricted, and all I need is an attack on this knight to win it. So what do I play? Bishop b5, attacking the rook, and after knight here, if the bishop blocks, I just take the knight, right? So the knight has to defend and block, and after bishop c6, this knight is completely lost, and so is the game. I won some 30 moves later, but the rest is not useful, really. The next game on stream was about patience and opportunism, and in this game, my opponent played a Taimanov, which I like to play against in an anti-theory approach with the white pieces. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. In this position, I like to play knight cb5. I think it's the 7th most popular move, called the Bastrikov variation. And this puts Taimanov players way off book because they're not used to this move. And in Blitz, that's very nice when their time is ticking down and can lead to very, very winning positions when they're down on time, right? So queen back. And now you just develop, and after a6 kicking the knight, now you use this knight on b5 to maneuver back to d4. But first you have to trade on c6, and now knight d4. And what you gain is that you have a nice advantage in development, and black has only pawns developed and a queen that's weirdly placed on b8. So knight f6, and we get our development right. Okay, I play very aggressive for equality, but still. Bishop d2, bishop c3, a very nice process to get the bishop on the nice diagonal. And after takes, I play queen g3, and my opponent suddenly sees that they're losing a pawn by force and goes with the sin castles, castling into an attack. Oof, that's tough. So here my best move is castle long or rook f1, just engaging in the attack and threatening this knight in one move. But I take here because I'm greedy. Bishop takes, the queen moves, and now I play castles long. And here I'm basically up a full pawn, full central pawn, with a very nice raise of bishops on these two diagonals. So queen e7, pawn e5, which is a big mistake. Winning move here is actually rook hf1 when this knight can't move because queen takes g7 is mate. But I play e5 because I miss my opponent's counterplay, knight d5. Very annoying move attacking my bishop. And here I go for e6, threatening checkmate, and after knight takes, I take with check and I take here. But here's where you have to be opportunistic, because now my opponent plays the mistake, bishop c7, in a position where the only good move was the same, attacking my queen, but bishop f2 to block the f line on this queen. But after bishop c7, I can play queen h3, tempoing, because I'm threatening to take on h7 with this bishop's help. And after g6, I can play rook hf1. And this is the opportunism. You only get sometimes one chance per game to win, and you have to put your foot on it. Rook f1 attacking this queen, which, after the queen moves, leads to opening up this diagonal. And now you can bring all your pieces into play. You don't have to win material. You just have to engage with initiative and open up for your pieces. So bishop c4, now my bishop breathes entire forests of air. The king moves, and now we get this square. So square acquisition, super strong in chess. Rook f7, forking this bishop and queen and threatening checkmate on the behind. And now comes the patience, because after a move like bishop c8, you can go for the piece up. Rook takes g7, bishop takes, and now rook takes bishop. But at 2500 level, the black pieces often come back in these situations. I'm telling you from experience. And you have to play the precision move. So I play patient, queen h4, keeping all the threats on the board. And the only difference now is that you can't attack my queen in a proper way. If g5, same, queen h5, we have all day here. And my opponent collapses here. Bishop d8, just like gives a full bishop. Rook takes, and now bishop e6, trying anything at this point. And here I play takes with check. Precision in winning positions. You'll never be mad at yourself for taking that 1, 2, or 5 extra seconds to play a more precise move. Check, rook takes, and I take this queen. My queen survives. I'm up like too much material. My opponent resigns. And now I get a very scary pairing. I'm paired against an Indian international master. He's 2600, so he's a bit above me, and I don't know who he is. He has an anonymous profile. Still to this day, I have no idea who this is. If you know who it is, comment down below. So I play e4, my opponent goes e5, and now we get into an Italian once again. Like, this variation is very popular at this level. I get this all the time. And here I go queen b3, putting pressure on this knight. And my opponent goes knight a5. Fun fact, you can get a draw here as black if you just continue repeating. But my opponent wanted to go for a win because he saw that I get +2 points if we draw quickly. So knight c7, castles, and now I go for a4. And this game is about optimism because a few moves later, after f6, I miss this knight ed7, a very special move. And this is an interference tactic. I'm taking off the queen's defense of this knight so that after bishop takes, my rook infiltrates and pressures this, and I'm threatening knight e6 with a nice, delicious fork. Oof. But I missed it, and I played knight d3. And so I go rook e2, and after this critical moment, knight g6, I find a very nice combination. Try to find it. And it's quite simple when you look at it as a problem, but in a chess game, it's very different. In a blitz game too, bishop takes, h takes, so that's the critical #1 candidate move. You're opening up a line on the king, and now the king is weak and susceptible to attacks. And that's exactly what carries on here. Queen h3 check on the king, king g8, and now knight d7, sponsored by this queen on h3, forking these two rooks. But that's not all. My opponent goes knight f4, attacking my queen and my rook in another fork. So now there's 4 heavy pieces on this chessboard that are attacked. And this is where the optimism comes in. If you're pessimistic, you're going to look at a queen move that's dumpy. And you're going to give this knight takes e2 with check. And then you're going to drop your knight and drop the game. But if you're optimistic, you play queen b3 check here. The geometric horizontal queen move from east to west point. Checking the king at once, preventing this knight to take my rook with check and this queen to take my knight in full. After the rook goes to f7, I take here and we trade rooks. Basically, it's a proxy trade, but knight takes e2, rook takes. And now my opponent realizes a very key detail of why queen b3 is winning. You see, after queen takes b8, I have rook e7 check to the rook, pressuring the pinned rook on f7. And now the queen f8 move is forced, but after I take this rook simply, my opponent has absolutely nothing to defend here, and this is a Zugzwang because this queen is forced to stay on the rook, and so is this king. And then I can just go king f1, trade at my leisure, and win this king endgame easily because I'm a pawn up. So my opponent sees this and plays the miserable move, queen takes d4, but he didn't really have an option, so nothing to him. And here white has a checkmate in 3 moves for my 1200 elos and below. Pause the video to solve. Here I have rook e8 check. This rook is pinned, so it forces the king to move. The rook cannot block. So after king h7, I have queen h3 check, and it will be checkmate next move. So I beat an IM, and then I'm facing a strong FM. It's just like you're out of the frying pan and into the fire. It's a crazy dog-eat-dog world in the 2500s, and I love it. And this game is about precision. Now we get into this queen's gambit, I believe, and after bishop takes f3, g takes f3, I've had a major achievement. As we've spoken about before earlier in this video, weakening the king can be worth plus infinity for your position. I highly, highly recommend it. But now I have weakened the king, but I don't have an attack. My pieces are not surrounded by the king. So I bring my pieces. Bishop d6, axing my bishop on this h2. So I'm giving e4, which is winning for white, but he misses it. He plays knight b5. e4 is not an obvious move. So I go knight f5. I'm trying to open up my queen for these 2 squares. So knight takes, and now bishop back to e2. He doesn't want to give up his bishop, I guess. And now I go back to f5. I never wanted to take that bishop. I always wanted this square for my knight because it takes up some very nice squares around the white king. So king moves to h1, and now I go with rook c8. So I'm trying to play on both sides of the board here. b4 trying to prevent this c5 push, and now I go with knight h5. I'm trying to get this queen h4 in. Okay, for concrete reasons it doesn't work. d5 is crushing for white, but my opponent plays bishop b2, which is a little bit of a slow move, and lets me play queen h4. And now we have an attack going. I come onto h4 and attack this pawn, and my opponent plays instantly like a pre-move, which was very, very curious. Rook g1, completely blundering the threat of queen h4, and now I can just take on f2 and threaten more pawns. When you take one pawn at the base of the pawn chain, other pawns become weak, and that's the case here. I'm threatening knight takes e3, tempoing this queen. So my opponent goes rook g5, he's attacking my knight, he wants to double rooks, counterattack, but white should be in total defense mode when this is not the case. Now I take here with an attack on the queen, and after queen d3, knight f4, attacking this queen. And the queen moves, and now I find a very nice move, knight h3. Attacking this rook with a very, very beautiful idea behind it. See if you can find black's very sneaky idea. And here I start recording a video, which I'll play for you. I posted it on my Instagram story, and it was live during the game I posted it, which is very funny. I have to record this live because I'm about to play the combination of my life. This is the live position. I'm playing this live on air. I'm attacking this rook. I could take it and defend mate. I have the mate queen g1 check here. And here I played the stunning queen g1 check, sacrificing my queen 2 ways by 2 rooks. Both are effortless. My opponent played rook g takes queen, and now I played knight f2 checkmate with a royal fork as a cherry on top of the sundae. Doesn't get much better than that. To an FM2. At 2500 Blitz, you also need the clutch factor on your side. I won't lie to you, I play 3+0 Blitz, so there's no increment to my time, and sometimes it's an absolute slaughter. We're at seconds, me and my opponent, and the first person who crumbles is the person who loses, right? This is one of those cases. I have 6.8 seconds and my opponent has 48 seconds, but I'm winning. I have a pawn up. I'm only winning though if I take the proper risks in this endgame. My opponent plays the mistake king h3, and this lets me in on a winning endgame idea. See if you can find it. It all stems from this king being on the edge of the board and super, super far away from his pawns, which gives me this idea pawn to d4. an absolutely beautiful breakthrough of this position, clearing this square, and more than that, these two squares for my king to go fetch this pawn on b4 or this pawn on e3 options. So knight takes with check, and now king d5, the only move that's winning. King g3 and now king c4, and an aggressive king in an endgame can be worth up to 5 points of value for that piece. So kings can be very strong in the endgame. King back to f2, king c3. I don't know why I took. Forgive me, I have 5.3 seconds on the clock. King e2, king takes b4, and this is pretty much all pre-moved at this point. King d2, I take the second pawn, and now I have to bring my pawns in a record amount of time. And here I have 3.3 seconds trying to avoid all checks from this knight. One check from this knight, and my time might as well go down to 0-0-0 in 1 second. So bishop b5, my opponent goes knight c3, and now I go king b4. At this moment, I am laser focused. I'm live streaming. I have no time to check on chat or anything. It's laser focus on these squares, trying to anticipate this knight's every move. My opponent goes knight d5. Check. I'm in big trouble. If I had pre-moved a pawn move, I'm cooked. But I had pre-moved a king move because I anticipated knight d5. Had I? No. It took me a second. No, he got me off guard. I think I had pre-moved this, and this cost me 1.2 seconds on my clock. Knight e7, big practical mistake. The knight is very far away from this king, and now I go c4. And after this knight takes this pawn, this knight is far away enough where I have time to play this. But I have a small problem. I have 0.9 seconds on my clock, which means I have 8 pre-moves to win this game, or else it's game over. And I become a superhero, quite literally. King b4, 0.8. Knight d4, c3, 0.7, check. And you can pre-move after a check because white only has a certain limited amount of moves. So I pre-move the next one, 0.6, bishop d3, king moves, 0.5, b2 check, king d1, and this was also pre-moved, 0.4, queen b1 queen with time to spare. Insanity. I thought that was instructive and very entertaining as a game to show. These final 4 games are my final 4 games on my current chess.com account at the time of making this video. These are my final 4 games to the top. And I have 2543 elo, and I'm playing against someone who's called the Duke of Draws. And that is a literal username. This guy offers draws every 3 moves to put you off guard. I almost reported him. It's super annoying. I have screenshots. I have receipts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 draw offers. So he's playing in a style that is very annoying. This is clear that he's playing a hippopotamus structure in which black basically develops like this in a completely troll mode. So not taking anything seriously. But after f5, now I have to punish, and I play e5, which is the wrong move. You actually want to go against this structure and play d5 here, which is a very interesting move. But e5, my opponent castles, and now I go bishop c4, attacking the weakness in the structure. d5, bishop goes back, and now he plays a big mistake, c5. And this lets me play d takes. He should have played knight takes, to be fair. But after b takes, now I have a very nice move, knight takes d5, sacrificing a full knight because this rook and this king are super weak. And after pawn takes, bishop takes, forking, knight takes, and queen takes, forking again. A lot of forks. King goes to h7, and now I pick up the exchange, and little by little, after knight f4, this is the moment I want to show. The knight gets into the attack. My king is super weak. But the knight gets into the attack, and I realize to myself, I think it's just blocking the rook, which had eyes on my knight. And not only that, the knight is not doing anything on f4. Although it's a very strong outpost for the knight, it's purely an ornamental piece, and this lets me open up my bishop because the knight was blocking. I get e6 in. And suddenly my bishop lights up the diagonal, and as we talked about earlier, acquiring squares is a huge thing in chess. That's why you always need to check up on your pieces. Are you acquiring squares? Knight takes, and now I have queen d3 check. And suddenly, this king is like lights are on and the king is completely naked. King goes back to g8. It's the only move. Now I have queen g6 check. And remember, I'm up in exchange from like 25 moves ago. So you can't trade queens against me if you're black. And if bishop here, I just pick up the knight with check because this is defended. So the knight goes back and now I can trade queens. And now I'm like, home sweet home. And how I felt here was amazing. Although I did have 16 seconds, my opponent blunders with bishop g7, the final blow of the game. Rook takes e6, sacking a full rook to win. And now you have to prevent your opponent's counterplay, so you have to stop this. And once you get like this iron fence here, you can start pre-moving moves galore. And that's what I did with 15 seconds. It's very necessary. And look how my time doesn't move at all. And here my opponent just resigns. I'm about to acquire a queen. It might take maybe 12 more moves to win, but he sees 13 seconds on my clock and he's like, there's no way I win this. Resigns. And this guy was harassing me all game with draw requests. He might have sent like 10 draw offers. I had to like click a button that said refuse draw offers, which I had never seen on chess.com before. And now we get to the third game before the ultimate achievement. My opponent plays e4, and here he goes for the Ponziani. It's a move. It's an opening that you don't see that much at my level anymore. And I like this anti-theory approach of mine, and I'll share what I play against c3 here in Blitz, pawn to f5, which is the Ponziani counter gambit. You're countering your opponent's gambit with another gambit. And so I play pawn f5 to sacrifice a pawn, but I acquire center. So if pawn takes, I go pawn d5, and I light up my bishop on this pawn, and I acquire the center. My opponent wants none of that, plays d4, and now I take, knight takes, and now I play knight f6. And after bishop e3, I go with d5, and basically, we trade here, and I get this glorious pawn structure. I love this pawn structure in chess, because after my opponent castles, which took a while, you can now see that my structure is aligned perfectly towards my opponent's king, which means that I have acquired squares that are nicely taken around the king. And I have this knight already coming in. And this whole castling move is an inaccuracy. And here black is -3. Like I haven't even started to attack yet. And my shit is already -3. So I go knight f4, infiltration. It's defended well by a bishop. Why not? Good pieces on good squares. Rook fe1, and now I go knight d3. My knight is swayed away from the attack, this is why this is inaccurate. Rook back to f1, and now I bring my rook in, and I go rook e6. This is called a rook lift in chess. I want to go to g6 and light up this king and threaten some queen takes f3s. My opponent goes c4, which is really nice. You want to attack in chess when the center is closed, so that permits you to play a flank attack. However, when you perform a flank attack, your opponent should try to open up the position to try to invade because, the center will be weak. And so c4 is a very logical move. And now I go rook g6, but I'm already first there. I'm already first one there. I'm too quick. The queen is going to take on h3. So king h1, getting out of this threat. And now I go with rook ff6, double rook lift. This is an actual thing. My opponent goes knight takes pawn. He's sacrificing a knight to now light up the queen on the diagonal and win the piece back with pawn takes. And so I go king f8. My opponent takes my bishop. And here I don't even have time to take because I realize I'm already winning with an immortal rook. Rook f3. Sacrificing a full rook for a crushing attack. My opponent cannot take my rook because of queen takes h3 mate. And my threat is queen takes h3 here. Pawn takes and rook takes with mate. And after queen takes h3, if you don't take my queen, I take this with checkmate. White has nothing here. And we talked about the activity of the pieces, your pieces acquiring squares. This bishop has no squares. These rooks have zero activity. This queen only has one diagonal. And when you're relying on only one diagonal for your entire pieces, that's when logistically you're in trouble. And my opponent plays bishop g5. And now once again, the immortal rook, I take this bishop because the threats are reinstilled. g4, and I mate in 2 more moves. And now I have my highest rating that I've had in a year. I go to 2551. And my next game is against a final boss of chess, Grandmaster Gorato from Serbia, who's 2600. And I have the black pieces. And my opponent from very early on takes me completely out of book with a rare system, g3 in the Italian. What? In the 4 knights game. So I go bishop c5. And the detail, the learning lesson here is that you got to go d6 in this position because of what white played on me. So after castles, a little too quickly played, my opponent plays knight takes e5, a positional sacrifice that's very strong. After knight e5, my opponent wants d4 with a fork here. And basically white's going to be small edge. So I sack my bishop first with check and take this knight, but this is very bad because this gives my opponent a full center. So I was okay with this, but I wanted to check the king before the king got to safety and manually castled. So when the king goes to g1, you can argue that white is down a rook because of lack of activity. But that doesn't compare to the center that white has, and my knights are terrible. And you'll see that very soon. I played d6, try to open up for my bishop, but now h3, knight back, and king here, and suddenly this king is manually castled very quickly, and now rook f1 and bishop g5 are coming in, and I'm absolutely destroyed. And during the stream, after rook e8 and now rook f1 and c5, my opponent plays bishop to g5, and I literally say to myself, yeah, I'm cooked here. Especially this is the threat, which is even more diabolical. But here comes the theme of optimism that we saw from a few games ago. After saying I'm cooked and looking at alternatives, I then find a very, very nice move and the only winning move in this position. Eval bar is back on. I'm actually completely winning here. And that's the mentality of being optimistic. You always have to be optimistic about your position. Knight f, g4, check. Discovered attack on this bishop, and after pawn takes, queen takes, this pawn is hanging. My opponent has nothing here. Bishop h3, and now it's very important with what you take back. You want the final piece on the square to be the best piece. So that's why I played bishop takes, because, okay, I'm also threatening queen h5 apart from attacking this queen, but also is after bishop takes bishop, I have knight takes with check, and the landing piece is now instilling a fork here on e3. And now I'm up in exchange against a grandmaster. You can imagine the tension. So I take the exchange, and after takes, I go queen takes with check, and I go back, and rook c8, and now rook c4. And when you're up in material, you have to target weaknesses or create them. Either it's the king that's weak or it's a pawn. In this case, it's the isolated pawn on e, which would let my rooks come alive on the e file. So my opponent defends. Also, when you're attacking weaknesses, you're tying your opponent's pieces on to passively defend some stuff. And after queen e5, my opponent straight up resigns, bringing me to 2560 and 6 points away from my all-time high. But there's a problem. My next game on stream, I'm paired against a 2675. I'm cooked. I'm cooked. d4, d5, c4. And I go into this triangle system, which is an opening I've played since I'm young. And I say this, I've played this since I'm young because I have tried so many new openings in the past months. It was kind of fresh to come back to some old stuff. So here, after knight c3, little known is that you can take here, and this is called the note boom. And this is not the queen's gambit accepted anymore, because in the note boom, you can defend your pawn in one move and it being completely safe. In the queen's gambit, you can't defend your pawn in one move. So one move earlier, if like this, knight c3, and then you take, and then e4, you can't defend your pawn in one move. The knight will take. But now we have c6 in, and you can take. And here my opponent plays a slight inaccuracy, e4. e3 is a little bit better, and you'll know why soon. b4, and if you want to regain the pawn, you have to take out the pin from this bishop. Takes, intermediate move, and now you have to play b3. And this is how white regains the pawn. And usually how black gives back the pawn but in good faith is by playing the move bishop b7, defending the rook here. And that's what happened. My opponent takes, and now b4 attacking this bishop. This is all normal, but instead of this pawn being on e3, it's now on e4, and my opponent's simply giving a pawn. And my reaction is genuine in the stream. I'll plug it in. Whoa, is he blundering? And I just win a pawn here. A pawn I'm not supposed to win. And I have 2 passed pawns, which is normal for this opening. But with this pawn up, it's really 2 passed pawns. So d5, I go knight f6 because I'm defending against rook, bishop takes, winning my rook. And now knight d2 and I take here. I'm winning a second pawn. But you can see during the stream, I'm not at all smiling. Like, I know very well this is like the most important game of my career so far, right? So you're seeing me completely serious. And like, I'm not even budging a smile. Like, I'm like stone cold Steve Austin. So knight takes, d takes, and now queen a4. And after queen d7, my opponent plays c5, which was a sour taste in my mouth and made me believe I could win. Because this is such a measly trick to go bishop b5, I kind of felt bad for my opponent. I was like, damn, that's what you think of me? Like, you think I'm going to go down to those lows as a 2700? Like, we don't blunder like that anymore at 2500, or very little at the 2500 level. So I trade, and I play castles, king safety, and I'm in an endgame with 2 passed pawns and 2 pawns up. But my opponent has a bishop pair, so you can never underestimate it. I keep eyes on board. And I go rook c8 here, attacking this pawn. And after bishop d4 defending it, I go knight c6, attacking the bishop. And now I see that after bishop e3, I can go knight d5, and I'm threatening a lot of stuff. Knight c3, knight takes bishop. And so I play knight d5, and this is my reaction on stream. A lot of energy. Just have to hone in. Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! And with that victory, I reached my highest Blitz Elo on chess.com in over a year, 2571, and I'm still standing at 2571 at the time of recording this video. So it could get to 2600 in the next weeks. It's exciting times in the chess nerd house right now. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was instructive. I'm trying to make my videos as instructive and as educational and as entertaining as possible, all in one. And I really hope I deliver on that package. Please give me your feedback about the video and tell me what I can do better. But yeah, I'm just a happy man playing chess right now in my life, and I would like it to stay that way for a little bit longer. And then one day, you guys, when you're investing in my channel and you're watching my videos and you see me grow as a chess player too, we're going to have our first Title Tuesday one day. Because I'm not a titled player. I have never played Title Tuesday in my life. I have never played these GMs 9, 10, 11 times in a row. One day we're going to have this Title Tuesday, which is going to be a huge redemption for our community after over 120 recaps of OTB tournaments and dozens of videos of my Blitz games. One day we're going to have that first Title Tuesday, and that's going to be sweet as ever. But till then, we stay patient, we stay smiling, and we stay persistent on our journeys. Wishing you the best, and thank you for watching.